Hey everyone, this is Austin, Tailgate Beers. Today's episode is all about Ryan Thompson. We've shared it some on this podcast. We've shared a lot of stories. I've gotten to hear a lot about you, but I think you're also the type of person that has, kept reserved about some things at times, and being able to piece all that together of who you are over the years has been fun to understand. But I also think we sometimes, miss those moments of really what makes you who you are and, why you are the way you are. So, yeah, we're going to dive in today. Again, we've got Surfside sitting here. They became a big sponsor of us. One of my favorites is pretty much your just straightforward iced tea vodka. The green tea has just become a new favorite of Ryan and I's. I would say it's probably Ryan's favorite.
It is definitely my favorite, yeah. But I do have this nice little reversible koozie that they gave us as well.
Yeah,
so I want to take it off so you can see that it's actually green tea, but yeah.
But no, we appreciate Surfside. So again, shout out Surfside for being a part of this, taking a chance, being a part of the festival and cruisins and everything else. But yeah, this whole thing is going to pretty much be sponsored by them because we're going to go through a lot of them. We've talked about your younger years. Talk about your family. How many siblings do you have?
So I have quite the extended family through some divorces a couple times over. But I have an older sister, Kirsten, who is an avid Tailgate Beers supporter. You can see her on all of our socials a lot. And then Miles is my younger brother. And then I've got Leanna and Alyssa are sisters as well. And then I have Brandon and Blake. Blake is the one that was just commenting about Joe Stam, so shout out to Blake and him being active on our socials as well. So all of those are in some way, form, or fashion, maybe not all blood, but certainly what I would call siblings.
Who do you think you were closer to as a kid, as far as, I don't know, an age, but as far as just throughout your younger years? I mean, did you guys have sibling beef? How was that for you? Were you the older? Were you the younger?
So I was the middle child, so I was always the one that was left out, having that middle child syndrome. But my sister is Kirsten. She's 2 years older than me, so she has that the age. And then Miles, my brother, who lived with us as well, he's 7 years younger than me. So a little bit of an age gap between me and him, but we also spent a lot of time together just because we were the two younger boys of the house and shared rooms at times growing up and stuff like that. So the older sister and the younger brother, again, kind of put me in the middle. And between those two, I will say, and a quick little digression here. So my older sister was Kirsten was always kind of the smart, and she ended up getting, herself into a little bit of trouble in high school, hanging around with, different crowds and whatnot. And then Miles, he's like the super smart, works for Caterpillar now, but he used to work for Rivian, used to work for City of Ohio, where I worked for a period of time. Has multiple degrees like physics and anthropology and just stuff that I can barely even pronounce. Always been the super smart guy. Like my kids to this day, if Dad doesn't know the answer, they usually say, "Well, let me call Uncle Miles," and just a super smart kid. So still is the same way. Like I said, he does like data science, data stuff that is way above anything that I could even think about understanding.
Do you have any crazy stories of sibling, family, funny things you look back on as a child that, growing up in the 90s and even, late 80s, of just some shit where you just look back on and just kind of laugh about?
So it actually happened recently, and I didn't even know this was coming, but it just popped in my head. So we used to, as a family, and the three of us as kids, and then my mom and my stepdad, who is basically my father as well. We used to watch Roseanne back in those days, and I think it might have been maybe it was a Cosby Show or something too. But one of the producers of that show was a girl, I guess. I don't know. I've never looked it up, but their name was Marcy Carsey. And one of the things that, it was like a daily show, right? Those are
Right.
5 days a week shows even at that time. And if it wasn't even at that time, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking more of recent history. But, on a Tuesday night watching Roseanne, when Marcy Carsey pops up on the screen, whoever is the first person that announces Marcy Carsey wins. Right. We didn't win anything. It was just one of those things where, it's just kind of internal family little competition. So, everybody's waiting for the show to get over and the little credits pop up and there's Marcy Carsey and, you gotta yell out Marcy Carsey and then you're the winner for the night. So that was always kind of a fun thing. And then actually here just recently within the last, 4 or 5 months, we were at my oldest daughter's house in Ohio and it was an old Roseanne show. We were watching, rerun. And Marcy Carsey popped up, and I yelled Marcy Carsey, and everybody in the house looked at me like I was, crazy. But so I had to tell them the story as well, and then texted my mom, so she was excited about that.
I mean, doesn't it pop up at the same time every time?
Oh yeah,
aren't credits like
yeah.
It's coming?
It's just one of those things where you have those little things as a family. You're sitting around, you're doing this, doing that. Maybe it's playing games or whatever it is. But that was just one thing in our house growing up that that I'll always remember. Every time that pops up, I'll always be the first one to yell Marcy Carsey.
So you're a young dude living in Henry, Illinois, right?
I was.
And born there?
I mean, I was born in Peoria, but yeah.
Born and raised
in Henry.
Yeah, born and raised in Henry.
So Henry is about 35 miles north of Peoria down Route 29. So Peoria is like our servicing city.
Yeah, right. It's the big city.
Yeah.
Young kid, as you go through junior high, sports, all that stuff. What were you into? What was kind of your obsessions that you went through? Like I was into fighter jets at one point and big into that. What were you kind of into as a younger kid, sports wise and even just dreaming wise?
Yeah, so I would say from sports as a younger kid, I mean, I played baseball up until, and Austin and I have coached baseball together for 4 or 5 years, up until probably junior high. Was always big on basketball. Basketball was like my coping mechanism for life. Right, so having a small court, not even a court, just having a basketball hoop on the side of my driveway for a period of time. It was actually on the garage until I broke it. But having that out there was my coping mechanism for anything that happened in life. I would go out and pick up a basketball and just shoot. That's where I learned how to rebound, because I was out there by myself for hours upon hours. And I would read the ball going to the rim, knowing that I had to go, this way or that way to go get the rebound by myself. And I still swear, and I still actually, coaching basketball today, I still coach kids how to read the ball, off the shot, just to put themselves in the right position for a rebound. But that's based upon, in the back of my head, thinking about that as a young kid, that, I don't want to chase the ball any farther than I have to. So I'm gonna read that.
So mine was much different because my basketball hoop.
Yeah.
Was a massive hill behind it.
Right.
And what's even worse is there was a curb at the end of our drive so that you couldn't drive off of it.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you didn't read that ball right, you were running because that ball was hauling. So that experience is so funny that it just kind of lives with you of reading it and yeah, coping with basketball is. There's nothing better than just shoot some shots.
And I mean, I'd be out there for hours and just shooting and getting my own rebound, shooting again, and junior high, getting into high school and whatnot. I had a little nicer hoop at that point, so I could dunk and lower the rim. That was a big thing. Back in early 90s. That you had an adjustable rim that you can lower down to 7-8 foot and dunk. So I was always working on my dunk game.
Meanwhile, I'm the kid that's got a tape measure out there making sure that it is exactly at 10 feet. No less, no more.
But no, that drove me a lot. I mean, my eventually I kind of dropped off of baseball and really focused on basketball overall. Did little things here and there, but one of the other thing that I remember as a kid is when the Saudi war. We're talking probably again early '90s. George Sr. I think I met George Sr. in Chillicothe, Illinois, when he was campaigning for president, and that kind of stuck with me in like fourth grade. Having to, getting to shake his hand as he was campaigning here.
Talking about like Desert Storm stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then Desert Storm started kicking off, and for whatever reason, and certainly as we go along this story, it does kind of piece itself together. But for whatever reason, I really got into like the war, and I started collecting the Peoria Journal-Star, and I don't have them today, but I had bags and bags of Peoria Journal-Star with nothing but the war stuff on the front page.
Wow.
From Desert Storm, and all of that was happening back in that day, and never really knew why, but it just was kind of not necessarily fascinating to me, but it was something that intrigued me or caught my interest. And I remember just having bags of again just papers that I wasn't reading them. It was just more of like a collecting and knowledge about them. And that probably goes to some of my history teachers that I actually did like or did pay attention to probably. But as we fast forward that story, you'll hear too that certainly going into the military, kind of creates the puzzle. We're not quite there yet.
I'm still getting there. Do you consider there was like 12 kids at Henry School when you were there?
There was
in your class.
It was I graduated, and I'm gonna get beat up for this, but all the socials, but I want to say off the top of my head, I think we maybe crossed over 40, somewhere around there. It might have been.
So if you're
30
splitting
something.
hair, we're, you're 20. You're in a class of 20 some boys, 20 some girls.
Roughly,
we're calling it 50-50.
Yep.
And that was throughout junior high and high school, or how big was the high school? Did the high school get?
The high school was no bigger than the junior high. We didn't really consolidate much then. We did have one small town that consolidated with us, but that was early on.
You're pretty much around all these same kids your whole life. Were you considered a good kid, a troublemaker, good grades? Where would people rank Ryan Thompson at?
Definitely not in the good grades department. I would say probably more of the attention-seeking class clown.
Okay.
The attention span, my attention span, if you ever watch me on a podcast or anywhere else, you know that I'm not very good at sitting still. I'm a little hyperactive, like to move around a lot. I sit on an exercise ball. I jump on trampolines.
We gotta get to that here in a little bit, but like
I'm getting too far ahead of myself here, huh?
So
but
you're
anyway,
class clown.
So I like to and it's not because I didn't like my teachers or whatnot or didn't respect them or anything along those lines. It was just I got so bored and I really felt like I needed to yell out some random chicken sound. And then they would give me detention.
You were the kid yelling penis in class.
I
Seeing how loud you
don't know
could
if it was
yell
penis, but
You've never played that game?
I was definitely that guy.
As you, again, I feel like we are very similar in a certain aspect of the school. Going to smaller class size, you're very. There's a lot of attention on you that doesn't necessarily always need to be on you, and that's kind of where I was going with this. Is even as a younger kid, both very hyperactive, ADHD, whatever you want to call it. Get into high school, again, very similar for me. Middle of the road, average student, I would assume, grade wise, just getting through. Getting through.
I don't know if I would say average.
Okay.
Just getting through, and a quick side story on that. So, sophomore year of high school. I took geometry for the first time and ended up not passing geometry, so I took it again my junior year. And I didn't get much better my junior year in geometry. I wasn't, practicing as much as I should have probably. So ended up taking geometry again my senior year. Came down to, I think it was graduation the day before graduation of my senior year, I had to pass the final with like a C or something like that in order to walk and graduate the next day.
Wow.
It took me 3 years. So
that's crazy.
And shout out to Mrs. McCrowley, who is my geometry teacher for 3 years. She's taught me a lot of lessons in life, and I've had this conversation with her, not in the last 15, 20 years, but previous to that, just some of the lessons. But a quick, I used to terrorize her. And so Mrs. McCrowley was a very nice teacher, kind of laid back, but I would just terrorize her. For whatever reason, she always had me sitting up in the front chair next to her table, next to the desk. Yeah, right. I don't know why. And geometry, so we had papers at the time. This is also, early 90s, mid 90s. And so she'd have the whole class pass the papers up to me, and or up to the front table, front desk where she was. They'd all get to me. And then once I got the whole stack of papers, I would take the stapler off of her desk, and I'd staple about 50 staples right in the middle of the whole stack of math papers. So when she would go to grade them that night, she'd have to peel each one individually, and they're ripping and tearing. And this is, all my classmates' work, that they were up all night doing. I didn't turn one in, so it wasn't mine. But I legit terrorized. I mean, it was. There's more of those stories, but I'll save those for off camera.
Making me look good.
Just so you know, at this rate, this podcast is going to be about 7 hours long.
Yeah, I know. That's where I'm trying to keep her moving along. I think it's good. I think it's interesting to know people's childhood, of where we are as kids, because I also think, I was a certain way that, yes, there are a lot of things I am now. I'm still ADHD. I still, have all these same certain habits. Some help me today and some hurt me still. And I think it's just interesting how people's passions and obsessions over certain stuff kind of evolve. Also the family you come from and around, how that kind of evolves. So you're in high school, you get to walk. During that time, I mean, you were basketball all through high school?
Yeah, basketball was eventually, probably even my freshman year, became my only true sport. I think I ever played baseball. I might have done track for a short period of time in high school, but it was primarily focused on basketball. Now, in Henry also, we didn't have football. So there was no football offer growing up, no JFL or anything along those lines. Probably would have enjoyed that. So like my junior year, maybe, we ended up consolidating just for football for my junior and senior year. I did not play just because, again, I was kind of into the basketball scene, but then also not playing growing up. I didn't want to go my junior, senior year and have no idea what I was doing.
Right. So basketball only pretty much through high school.
Yep.
No ambitions for college basketball? Was there a hope? Was there
was a hope, but again, going back to my grades, I just didn't have the grades, and my coaches and teachers told me all along, I wasn't a D1 athlete by any stretch of imagination, but a lower end D2, a D3, something along those lines, I probably could have gone played, but didn't have the grades to even get into college, let alone be thinking about anything along those lines. So yeah, I mean, I just as I was graduating, Caterpillar here in Peoria, Illinois is a large employer. I was able to get an apprenticeship with them, so I started off doing AutoCAD type of apprenticeship with them straight out of high school.
I don't know that I even knew that, to be honest with you.
Yep, did that for a period of time. Went to ICC, Illinois Central College, and had an apprenticeship with them.
I literally don't know that I knew you did AutoCAD and did all that stuff. Maybe you told me.
Pro engineering, so. AutoCAD.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
Did you have a serious girlfriend all through high school? Were you I don't have a girlfriend type guy, just kind of play the field? Where was that at in high school?
Didn't play the field. I mean, there wasn't a ton, but definitely had a handful.
High school is the age where the military, I think, grabs a hold of most people if there is that chance. Again, I was there on the cusp of, but again, also generation times were a little bit different as far as what wars were in, who's president, things that are going on. where were you at in the military at this point of why didn't you go directly out of high school? You're going to ICC, doing AutoCAD. Where does it come into? Let's jump into it.
So interestingly enough, my apprenticeship, because of my own doing, and again being 18-year-old boy at the time, decision making wasn't my best thing and that I had going for me. So the apprenticeship, I lasted maybe 6-8 months. Didn't finish, didn't graduate. I didn't graduate ICC. I did that for a period of time.
AutoCAD didn't grab your attention?
Well, I enjoyed that part, actually. I did enjoy that part, but it was also going to school. I had some other things going on behind the scenes with, family stuff and whatnot that, eventually what I decided I needed to do was, get a job full time, which I ended up getting on with, some of the contractors from Caterpillar, Butler at the time. I don't know if they're even still around or not, but got on with them full time. Ended up getting my own apartment, stuff like that, in Henry with a roommate for a short period of time. Shout out to Mitch. For lots of different reasons, I end up thinking that I can no longer go to school and do an apprenticeship, but I need to get a job full time and be able to support myself on my own kind of thing at 18 years old. So had an apartment, had a roommate, and started working at Caterpillar doing AutoCAD stuff still, and just doing it full time. Again, 18 years old, I'm partying, living that life, and end up screwing that up too. And so next job, right? So next job, I start selling cars. So I become a used car salesman here in Peoria.
Oh God.
Yeah. So I start selling cars here. One dealership here in Peoria, Pioneer Parkway. Still there. Sold cars there for a little while. I was horrible at that. Horrible at that.
What do you think you were the worst at about that?
I don't like to bother people. Say it that way. From a sales, I am a horrible salesman.
You know that I sold cars too, right?
Really? I don't know if I ever knew that.
At Lexus.
Oh, really?
During COVID.
Oh, yeah. I did Dodges, but yeah.
I looked at one of my first sales I ever did was I was like, you don't have to fucking buy this thing if you don't. I could give two shits if you buy this thing. And what's crazy is that actually, they just appreciated me being like, listen, you can buy this. You don't have to buy this. I literally don't care. Makes no difference to me. And the person was like,
I worked at 2 car dealerships, and
so you're just like, fuck, I'm not a car dealer. I can't sell cars.
Not a salesman. For whatever reason, after my second car dealership that I still failed at, I would legit just go. I'd get to work on time, but then I would go out and find a van on the lot, and then I'd go get the keys to the van and go sit in there, turn the radio on, sit in the back of the van, take a nap, it started to take a little bit of a toll on me, and couldn't find what I was good at. And in a short period of time, I went through many jobs, and there's a couple more in there. I did door-to-door sales of life insurance for a period of time. That obviously didn't last very long. Worked at a printing company locally. I worked at another contractor for Caterpillar downtown in Peoria. And so I did all of this, everything that we talked about in the last 10 minutes, up until May timeframe of the next year. And that's when I joined the military. That's when I left for the military was May.
What got to that point of you saying this is the answer? Was it just, hey, I need something to pay for schooling. I need something different. I want to go travel. What did you know somebody that was going? Because there's always somebody that's like, well, I had a buddy that joined, so then I joined.
Yeah.
I needed schooling paid for. There's only, so many reasons of why.
I had a buddy that was a year older than me in school, played basketball with him. He had joined the Army, and I would talk to him every once in a while, and I'll never forget this phone call or whatever it was at the time. I called him, said, hey, Eric Stoker, shout out to you. Eric, thinking about joining the military. And he was 82nd Airborne at Pope, which is in, I think, North Carolina. He said, hey, if you're going to go in the military, I'm always going over to Pope, and, I see these Air Force guys, and it's just like a whole, it's like, a fraternity. It's like, they're having fun. They actually enjoy, life and so on and so forth. So if you're going anywhere in the military, go to the Air Force. And that's the door I went into, and that's why I joined the Air Force, was because Eric said that that's what I should do.
How soon from the time you join are you moving somewhere, getting headed off?
So I joined in May of '99 is when I actually went into the military. So as I was leaving for the military, again, I came out of the recruiting station here in Peoria, Illinois, and ended up meeting up with two guys, both from Washington, Illinois. Meet up with them. We all leave for basic training together, right? So we're all starting basic training together. 2 out of the 3 of us. One of the last things that we go through tech school, which was Security Forces Tech School, which is also at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. So we're at San Antonio the whole time. This would have been springtime frame. 2 out of the 3 of us were asked if we wanted to stay in San Antonio to be instructors, which also meant that we would have to not go to our first duty station, which I had at the time. I had orders to Germany, Spangdahlem, Germany. And so I already had orders there. I was getting ready to go there in weeks. And Chief Master Sergeant Wharton, who still follow on Facebook and see his stuff all the time, pulled me in his office and asked if I wanted to stay and be an instructor for Combat Arms. So Combat Arms is where we teach people in that realm. Lackland Air Force Base, all of the basic trainings they come through, they fire at the time M16s. And they were in desperate need of instructors to teach these basic trainees how to shoot M16s. So desperate enough where they were taking people straight out of school in order to make them instructors. So part of the deal was I'd have to stay there, go through another tech school to become an instructor. And Tim Mullen and I, we both went through that. There was 30 of us or so all together that were asked to do this. And Tim and I became very close. Like I said, he was from Washington. When we got the opportunity, we would go on leave together, drive back because, again, I'm from Henry, he's from Washington. It just made sense for us to kind of plan our leaves together, vacations, if you're not familiar with the leave term. We'd come back home, spend, a week home with family, and then we would, jump in a car together and drive back. Spent a lot of time with Tim. He would come over to my house, and at that point, long story short, I had gotten married for the first time in between my 2 tech schools because that was already being planned. So he would come over to my apartment because he lived on base. We would party together. We would go out and shoot hoops together, stuff like that, and became very close there. So we end up, all of us together, Tim and I together, we end up getting stationed in San Antonio. That was part of the deal as well, as becoming instructors, that they needed us to be there. So we had been there for like I said, about 2.5 years in San Antonio. Had seen, turn the town up. San Antonio, Texas probably is not the same since we've been there. But it really enjoyed our time and getting to know the city and everything it had to offer. I loved San Antonio. I was actually on the Honor Guard. So if you're not familiar with the Honor Guard in the military, so the Honor Guard is those individuals who are going to funeral services for those who have passed, veterans that have passed, retirees that have passed. They're doing, flag folds and 21 gun salutes and stuff like that. So I was a super trooper. I wanted to do the best I could and be different than what I was doing growing up. So I joined the Honor Guard, and I'm going to funerals, 2 or 3, 4 times a week. I'm passing out flags next to Ken's, doing flag folds, doing all of this for Honor Guard duties, which was basically like half my job at that point in the military. I was actually at a funeral, got done with a funeral, just got done. Went back to the office where the Honor Guard folks were at, and I get there, and as soon as I get there, one of the young ladies that worked in that office got a phone call, and basically said that there was a young airman that got killed on his way to work that morning. Really didn't put pieces together. And I don't know if she meant to say his name out loud or whatnot, but it was Tim. And he was on his way to work, 7:30, whatever time it was, and lost control. I think he blew out a tire, lost control, didn't have a seatbelt on. My last funeral that I did for Honor Guard was Tim's. and ended up giving the flag, the folded flag, to his mom, graveside service. I now live 5.1 miles away from where he's buried. Memorial Day, as you know, it's a big day for me. Every Memorial Day, we go to his gravesite and spend some time there. But then we also have a good time at my house. That's the big pool party Memorial Day, and that's when we've had 100 people in our pool, and none of them ever got out to go pee. I don't know how they were holding it that long.
There's only one person I know that doesn't get out to go pee.
But yeah, so I mean, it's just kind of a full circle moment there that I certainly wanted to share that story, and a lot of his family still in Washington area. And
so at that time, he's how old?
He would have been probably the same age as me, so probably 20.
Where's your head at that point? What's your next step as far as how much longer are you there? Where do you go from that?
I had new orders, not my Germany orders. I had new orders at about the same time that he had passed, and I was still, dealing with that trauma. I had orders to England. I was supposed to go to England, and I was itching to get overseas at some point. That was one of the reasons that I joined the military that we really didn't get into, but I wanted to go travel.
Where's 9/11 at in this?
So,
and I bring that up because it is a very crazy time at when you joined and like the events that all happened, and I'm still trying to piece together.
So I was just off base, and I remember trying to get into the gate. San Antonio, yes,
okay.
Still in San Antonio. Still in San Antonio. I was off base trying to get back on base, and San Antonio, Texas, Lackland Air Force Base, and everything was just kind of shut down while they kind of figured it all out.
Those handful of years right around there were like emotionally driven for being a young teenager, kid, an American citizen. It was like I mean, if I had been in high school at that point, I would enlist like the next day. You moved to other states, and you went overseas at some point. When did that happen?
I was at San Antonio at Lackland Air Force Base for right around 4 years, and was an instructor there. And while you're there, you're kind of in a controlled environment, or controlled, I don't know what you even want to call it, or I can't remember what they would call it, to where you really didn't get deployed from there, right? It's one of those types of positions or roles that they really didn't deploy from that base or from that area. So my next duty station, I ended up going to the Air Force Academy. So Colorado Springs, so not too far up the road from Texas. Colorado Springs, I was there from about 2003 until 2007, roughly. Also, being at the Air Force Academy, it's also what they call a special duty. So at the Air Force Academy, I wasn't going to the Air Force Academy as far as a cadet is concerned, or a student. I was actually teaching the cadet students how to shoot 9 mils. Ever since I've been out in the military, so kind of what you'll hear here is I spent a lot of time in the firing range. My first 7 years, I was in the firing range, probably 7 years, probably all 7 of those years, every day. I mean, hot, cold, snow, scorching temperatures in San Antonio, Texas. I'm on the firing range. So I got, gunshots going off in my ears, all the time. But at the same time, I had not free reign or free access, but I had access to be able to, make sure that I was proficient within what I was teaching. So I could go out and have, proficiency time as well. So I could basically shoot, anything that we had, available to us, at just about any time. So I got out. It wasn't like a big thing. I didn't even buy a gun when I was out of the military, probably 10, 15 years. It's just been the last 5, 7 years I had a little bit of interest. But yeah, at that point, it just wasn't, something that I really wanted to do or have.
It's just interesting because us being friends and stuff, which I had a phase in my life where I did it, and like we've been friends for now 5 years, and not like we're out shooting and our big gun guys and have all this stuff. And so we get to 2007, and then what is the next step from there?
I mentioned that I was going through divorce, shortly after Tim passed. Ended up getting remarried And Joelle, my oldest daughter, who is 22 now, she was born, and she was born in San Antonio. Luckily, she was born in San Antonio. So San Antonio Hospital there is one of the best, if not the best, hospital within the Air Force. And she was born with gastroschisis, which, long story short, we found out when her mom was about 17, 18 weeks along. So she had basically her belly button never came formed. And she's probably going to kill me for talking about this in detail. But when she was born naturally, but all of her intestines, her stomach, her kidneys, her liver, everything was out. They legit put her in a bread bag, feet first, in order to protect all of her organs, and immediately took her into to surgery. And legit, I mean, the way it was explained to me, they legit stuffed everything in to her stomach cavity, sewed it up, created it to this day. She doesn't have, a belly button like you and I, but she has, where they basically pulled all the skin together after they stuffed all her organs in, and sewed it up. But she was in NICU for a period of time. They had to make sure that all of the organs worked, through all of this, trauma on her body and stuff like that. Luckily, she bounced back like a trooper. Was out of the hospital, out of the NICU within 6 weeks or so, and and other than some scars, she's never had any true issues from that, which obviously we owe all to the grace of God of watching over on that. Kind of full circle moment with that as well is that one of the times I was home, I visited Tim's grave and asked Tim to kind of be the overwatcher of her going through this and knowing what was about to come, and he certainly took care of that for me. So
wow, that's crazy. I mean, did I share on mine?
I've heard bits and pieces, and it's
mine was like almost a similar thing, right?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yep. So Joelle's mom was in the military at the time too. So she was in the military. She was in the Air Force, and we worked in the same squadron in San Antonio. We ended up getting married and have Joelle, and then we get to Colorado Springs. Shortly after, we have our son Trenton, who is 21 years old now, and we had him at Fort Carson, which is the Army post there in Colorado Springs. I'm stationed at the Air Force Academy, so I'm working out at the firing range every day. I'm teaching cadets. The kids are starting to grow up and become a little bit older. They're only 15 months apart, so they're very close in age. Their mom and I end up splitting, and she took both of them and moved back home when she got out of the military with our older son. And she went to Ohio, which is, again, probably part of the story here later on. She went to Ohio because I was home to her. We moved to Colorado. She and the kids left Colorado and went to Ohio. And the first deployment that I could jump on. I mean, you go through all of that. We talked about 9/11 happening. The first time that they offered me a deployment, I jumped on it.
How much of that was driven because of that? The relationship and all that happening at that time? Was it like, give me whatever you fucking can, I'm going to go wherever because you got a lot of emotions going on.
Oh, yeah.
Between
No, there was
9/11 shit, between another separation, kids going back to Ohio. Just like, fuck it, send me anywhere. Was that
that's probably a lot of exactly what happened. So I think you read into that one perfectly.
So now, where is your first deployment at?
My first deployment, I go to, it was a 4-man deployment to Ashgabat, Turkmenistan.
So at this point, you're mid-20s.
Mm-hmm. Barely, yeah.
Barely.
Yep.
24,
yeah.
23, 4 range. Okay.
Somewhere around there.
And you're there for how long?
I spent 6 months there. That actually, and you know me personally, but that's actually where I tore up my knee for the first time. Well, I was in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan, and there's a top secret story on how I did that, but ended up having to take a little bit of a defensive stand against the local army, and ended up tearing my MCL, and ended up getting flown out of Turkmenistan because of that.
Really?
Yeah.
From the knee injury?
Mm-hmm.
So you fly out into where?
Germany.
And then you're in Germany for roughly how long?
I mean, it just depends. I mean, sometimes you get stuck in Germany for a couple of days. That time, I don't remember. I was in and out of Germany.
Where
so
was
many
your
times,
next stop?
That was it. So that was my deployment. You know, that 6 months that I was there was my deployment.
Right, so
I ended up getting hurt and then going back to Colorado. So I get back and heal up my knee through all of that, and I basically said, I mean, I'm still in Colorado, and within probably a year, I said, let's run it back. So I volunteered for another deployment. Got on a team, a little bit larger team. We actually went to a base. We were stationed in Kuwait, doing missions in and out of Iraq. And that was kind of the start of what eventually will become my certification as far as the Phoenix Raven is concerned. You know, that's really where my life changed, because that was the first war scene. You know, I had been in for that at that point probably 7-8 years in the military, and I'd seen some stuff, but it wasn't war stuff. Obviously, I dealt with trauma, with Tim passing. You know, another time where our first sergeant got blown up by a package bomb, you know, in our office.
In Kuwait?
No, this was back in San Antonio. Totally different podcast.
Oh, but, that happened sometime while you were in San Antonio?
Yeah, our first sergeant.
Just
it was a disgruntled airman, and our first sergeant, he sent her a package bomb in the mail. And she opened it and ended up blowing off like fingers and hands and stuff like that.
So at this point, you're in Kuwait.
Yeah.
And now you start dealing with some actual, like, real, like,
first time of
conflict.
Right. I mean, going in and out of Iraq. I mean, we had a lot of missions that were convoying. You know, and the big thing, I'm sure if you didn't live under a rock during that portion of the war, a lot of IEDs. Our first time, I mean, this is 2006, 2000 time frame. Yeah, 2006 time frame. So we only had, you know, been 5 years after 9/11. So IEDs were a big thing that they were using against us that we really hadn't been prepared for or had to deal with previously too much. So that was a big thing. Two moments that I'll never forget from that trip, which, you know, good, bad, and ugly, and we talk about all three. But one of them was I was supposed to go on a convoy, which is a driving convoy from Kuwait to Iraq, and I was supposed to go out the next day on this convoy, and for whatever reason, I got scratched from that convoy, and I think I was out on one previously, or they scratched me, whatever the reason was. That convoy the next day went out again. I was scratched from that. That convoy, the truck, and that I was supposed to be in, ended up getting hit by IED, and I'm pretty sure, if memory serves me correctly, that everyone in that truck, to include the gunner, if I'm not mistaken, or at least two out of the three, were killed. Obviously, that's a moment you reflect on. But then I was also there when their bodies, you know, within the next however many hours, whatever it was, day, came back to the base before they got shipped back home to in most cases Dover's, where they came through, which is in Delaware. But met them, you know, their bodies, and ended up taking part in some of their honor guard type of duties. So that was certainly an event that I'll never forget. The other one, which is life changing for me as well, is that from there I was in a flying mission, and we were going to Baghdad. And again, this is only 2005, so we haven't been in Baghdad or Iraq for that long. So there was still a lot of stuff going on there, and probably still is to this day, but a lot of stuff going on there. So it was a C-130, which is a decent-sized cargo aircraft, not the biggest one we have, but a decent-sized cargo aircraft. And we're getting ready to land in Baghdad. And a lot of shit going on the ground, and we just started getting ready to land, getting ready to do my job as far as security is concerned. For whatever reason, I didn't even know at the time until a few minutes later, we don't land, and we end up basically getting feet away from the landing strip, and take right back off of up in the air. And I'm up in the cockpit area, which is a bigger area. I'm sitting back behind the pilots, and I can see that something was wrong, and I could tell just by their demeanor as well. And they had some mechanical issues where we end up circling over Baghdad, which isn't the most favoritist place you want to circle over for too long. We end up circling over Baghdad, trying to figure out how we're going to land, because none of our landing gear was working. Nothing would work, come down, all that kind of stuff. A lot of other mechanical stuff going on with the C-130. And I distinctly remember the pilot, the main pilot, turning around and looking at me and said, say your prayers. 15, whatever it was, 1,000 feet above Baghdad, right. Iraq. And that meant something to me, obviously. So I go through my thought process of trying to figure out this is it. It's one of those moments in life, if you haven't basically accepted the fact that my life is over. That was it for me. And
because you don't have it's not like you guys carry parachutes on every single
and
thing. It's not like you can just bail.
And even if they did, it'd probably be a handful, and likely I was not going to get one.
Yeah, and you're over Baghdad.
Right. Right. So yeah, I mean it was just one of those moments where I believed when he turned around and told me to say my prayers, and so I did, and I legit accepted the fact that I was about to die. And I think when you have those moments, just my personal opinion, and from that traumatic experience for me, it changes you. I mean, the little things don't necessarily matter as much anymore when I am legit, and I have 2 kids at this point, Joelle and Trenton. I am saying my prayers to and for them, and basically accepted the fact that I was not going home, and I was going to die that day. And I think, again, mentally, once you do that and you accept that, it changes the way that you think about life. It changes the way that you handle things from that day forward forever. That's something that I will never forget, for sure.
I feel like you discredit it a little bit, and I'm saying this as a completely neutral party that's never been in that experience at all. I will never be able to say that I fought for my country, served, any of that stuff. So when you sit here and say, like, well, my story is, I haven't been through what this guy did, or you didn't, it's not like you've ever been shot or had an IED blow up or anything like that, but it doesn't mean that it still doesn't have that that trauma on you and that experience of what you've been through. I mean, everybody has their risk of going into it. Everybody's numbers get called differently, and it's crazy to think like how your life could have been very, very different had you been on that, had I just been on that convoy, had this not worked out this way,
mm-hmm.
And we talk about our chapters of our life, and so no, man. I mean, for me, again, I as Ryan's friend haven't heard even half of these stories the way you tell them now. I think it's good to talk about them, and just also not discredit. Like, dude, you still dealt with this and went through this, and at this time, you're still only 20. 28, 27, 6. I mean, somewhere in the mid to late 20s, not even late 20s, but mid 20s.
Yep.
It's a lot. While 2 children are at home or in Ohio, while you're still dealing with your own personal problems, it's still a fuck ton to just have that weight be on you and be dealing with and try to come up with your own answers of life and why you're doing what you're doing. And I can't imagine. So yeah, definitely don't discredit where you're at with that. And that's there's a lot of people that have never sacrificed that much even. So
yeah, for me, I think it's just some of it is respect, because there's, obviously the people that have paid the ultimate sacrifice, and that's why Memorial Day is such a big day for me personally.
Every form of service, sacrifice, there are cops that literally deal with some fucked up shit every single day that I put on the same level of serving your country.
Yep.
You are putting your life at risk every day to do something. And then there are cops that are complete douchebags that are taking advantage of certain stuff. They are still putting their life on line, don't get me wrong, but not on a certain level where they're doing it for some of the wrong reasons, and they power trips and whatever. What's so fucked up, a guy who's older than me in high school, goes over, gets blown up, burns all over his body. He battles his own problems with relationships, jobs, life in general, while getting like honorary, like all these awards locally, struggling with all this stuff, dies slipping on ice at Sue's place in Metamorum.
Wow.
That dude should never have to work a day in his life. There should be red carpet galore to a certain, to an extent of like his life and his family and everything they do. And that was a younger point where it hit home for me, where I'm like, this is just crazy. And again, this is your story, but that's me looking at it from a civilian standpoint.
I appreciate it.
Of somebody that, like, again, I didn't get it. And here you're sitting and you're about to the point of the 2007 time frame. I graduate high school. I'm having calls with, again, recruiters, joining the Marines. It's one thing that when you serve and you go to sign up to try to serve a country and you're dealing with this, but now here you start getting 7, 8, 10, 12 years from this. Like, does there come a point where you're going, what are we doing? If I sign up to do this, I mean, I need to be fully prepared to like serve our country and not be like, what the fuck is this president having? What are we doing? Right. And I got cold feet with doing it, and it's something that I wonder how your vision of how it's the struggle, if there was any, of when you get sent over places, what are we doing? You've kind of seen some things. You're in your young, 20s.
I enjoyed the deployments, one, just because it was something different, which I do enjoy change. It was so eye-opening. I mean, it was such an experience that, again, that you don't forget, that when you go to Ashgabat, Turkmenistan, everybody is trying just to make a living to feed their family, right? And this was way before Uber or Lyft, where every car in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan, or in Turkmenistan, probably even larger than just the capital of Ashgabat, is a taxi cab. The 4 of us as Americans, that's how we got around. You'd stand on the corner and they'd pull up, and you kind of give them directions or give them, an address of where you're trying to go, or you try to, speak their language or whatever. And, they would tell you, oh, nope, I'm not going that direction or whatever. But
could you ever speak another language very well?
So I could speak just enough, because Ashgabat, Turkmenistan, or Turkmenistan itself as a country is an old Russian country. It's one that, kind of declared sovereignty or declared whatnot from Russia, had, however many years previous to that. But there was still a lot of Russia happening there. Still a lot of Russian-speaking folks, but they also had their own languages too. So I learned enough Russian to be able to go down and order, food at a local restaurant, because, the fascinating thing for me is us as Americans. There's some of us, don't get me wrong, and I'm probably gonna get beat up for this, but yeah. So we don't, take advantage of the opportunities that we have, right? I mean, you go to a third world country, and almost everybody there, can speak English. They can speak Russian. They can speak Turkmen, which is their local whatnot language. But their education system isn't teaching them that. It's life that's teaching them that. It's if you want to have opportunities, you better learn that.
Because there's probably also like teenage kids there doing like full adult work.
Oh,
at that
absolutely.
point that are,
Absolutely.
Hey, you're 12 years old, kid.
Yeah.
You got to get out and.
No, yeah.
You got to it's about time to be an adult.
School was probably an option, after like 10 years old, and don't quote me on that, but
that's crazy.
But yeah, no, it was just crazy to see it. So I enjoyed that part, and legit, after going through San Antonio and doing the instructor thing for 4 years, and then even getting to Colorado Springs doing the instructor thing there for a couple of years, I was like, send me. I'm ready to go. And at that point, again, going through the divorce, and my kids were in Ohio. I'm in Colorado. Kuwait's no closer to Ohio than Colorado is, but at the same time, I was anxious to see the other part of it. I was anxious to see what the war side was, and so yeah, I jumped at that as early as I could.
Odd question. What music, because we didn't touch on that in early life, because you were pretty much, when you were born, there like records were just being invented. Then came
tracks.
All the other stuff, 8 tracks.
Yep.
But at this point, where is music at in your life while you're overseas, if any? I don't know if you had an iPod.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a CD player?
So even growing up, music was something that I always had around me. I've always enjoyed music. I've always enjoyed a vast array of music as well. Having a little bit of a rock background. Metallica Black Album. We've talked about it on the podcast, and we've had a few guests that have asked us what our top 5 albums are, and
we're getting to that point.
Yeah. So not to burst a bubble on that one, but certainly that is something that had an impact on me. Some friends of mine, Brendan Bogner, I've mentioned him on the podcast for this very same story, but kind of introduced me to Metallica and Eric Leffers as well, and really getting into a little bit more of the rock side. Earlier on, I did a little of the boy band stuff. NKOTB was big at that point. 4th, 5th grade for me. New Kids on the Block.
Yeah.
You looked at me like you didn't know what I was talking about. So
I was just shocked. I'm more shocked because I didn't take.
Oh, there's stories there that I'm sure people could tell too about reenacting NKOTB's performances and my 5th grade talent show. But
you definitely maybe search the archives to get those on this. So you're overseas. Are you guys playing music on tapes, CDs? What does that look like for you over there to kind of get you through some of these times and as you're traveling?
So I'm getting to your question. Before I get there though, after my second deployment, I came back and dealing with all these emotions from the things that I had mentioned, and my kids are not there. They're in Ohio, and dealing with that emotion and all of that. That is really where I turned to music almost as a crutch, if nothing else. And so I don't even know if you know this or not, but I have a handful of songs that I've written from that period of my life specifically. One about relationship and that kind of thing. I've written some stuff just about other those types of traumas. One about some leaders in my life from an early perspective of grandparents and grandpa and stuff like that. So starting to learn to play music at that point. I'm playing guitar. I grew up playing drums, so that was kind of always a back thing for me. Ended up starting to play a little bit of music in a garage band. Shout out to Mike and Sean. That's when we had the band Flesh Knob, which is the best band name. This side. Actually, it was on the other side of the Mississippi. But
have you ever thought about getting with like creative vets and doing any of the writing or getting involved more in that, or is that?
I've talked to him a little bit. No, I still enjoy doing the music. I still enjoy playing music and can still play those songs that I wrote then. I still, every once in a while pick up a guitar and still know, the chords and stuff like that. But no, certainly I've talked to Brandon and the guys over at Creative Vets. I follow their stuff and I've done a little bit of stuff with them. But either way, so getting into music that way too, and we said it on the podcast many a times, is that you kind of define the chapters in your life by the music that you're listening to. And to answer your question originally, no, that was like the iPod phase time. I mean, you are downloading all this LimeWire and everything else, and you've got 5,000 songs on your laptop that you put on your iPod.
Wrecking computers.
Oh yeah. And I also had, really long plane rides as well. I mean, you're talking, 15, 18-hour plane rides here and there. So having a full iPod of music certainly was sanity. But then also when you're stuck in, the desert, music became your friend. And I remember all kinds of nights for all kinds of different kinds of reasons of just sitting there with my headphones in and just listening to music and dealing with life that way.
While we're on this topic, because I don't really know how we're ever going to come to a stopping point, while we're on this topic and we're sitting here talking about this, music now is really, baseball brought us together. Our kids brought us together, and now, you're a grandfather. You have 4 kids, grandbaby, all this stuff.
Grandbaby is just turned 1.
Yeah,
Colton.
just turned 1.
Yep, Colton James, which is also my middle name.
Where does music now, and where we sit in life, where does that play a part for you, and kind of your stress and your anxiety, everything you have going on? Where does that play a part, and what are your favorite albums? And I know, again, I don't want to bring back, any I say the plane saga all the time, but now I'm backtracking on whether or not I should say, hey, you're on a plane and it's going down.
Yeah, right.
Now I feel like I don't want to bring up any, but no, for me, seriously, I know. All right, you're over Baghdad. Your plane is going down.
Say your prayers.
Yeah, now I feel like it's like that whole meaning of me saying that, and you've never told me all this shit.
PTSD every time you say that.
God damn it, he's going to bring up the plane again. But no, in all seriousness, where does it play a part? And what are 5 very influential albums for you, you that stand the test of time for you?
So I think it was Raised Rowdy asked us, and I think, who was it? Austin Snell, when we interviewed him. I think he kind of turned the question on us as well. And I don't think I've ever even got to 5 either time I've been asked. I'm not a huge album guy. All right. So it's hard to nail down albums. The easiest one album wise, obviously, the Black Album from Metallica, because I already mentioned that. And that was a huge time in my life. It'd be either between that or eventually, because of that, and getting into the Metallica scene this was like 5th grade for me. And Justice for All was something that I eventually kind of took hold of too, which is a little bit harder than even the Black Album, obviously. But that is something that I just learn a lot from and listen to even to this day. Moving forward into, again, like the chapters of my life, I think about Shinedown, Colorado Springs, being on the Air Force Academy, going through lots of different emotions from a lot of different things that happened in my life, whether it was deployment, whether it was my kids or marriage or divorce or anything along those lines. And I can't even think what the album name is from that time frame. I looked it up one time just in case I ever got asked, but that's the one that has like 45 and one of their other big covers too that them and Jelly Roll have done. So definitely a Shine Down is in there. That one specifically had a big impact on me. Same with like a Godsmack. Godsmack came out with an album. I think it might have been live or acoustic, something along those lines, probably around 2006 time frame. Ended up seeing them live in person that year too, and that rhythm and that sound certainly is something that I think about as far as that chapter in my life. Going back, way back, even before that, and I've said it before when been asked, but when I lived in San Antonio, obviously a big country area, George Strait was the big guy in town, King George there, but he lived just outside of San Antonio, and everybody would always say that, But he'd come in town every once in a while, and with the San Antonio Spurs, and some of them lived out there too. So I always enjoyed George that way, just from living there for 4 years and being in his world out there in San Antonio. Going forward from there, I kind of went into a little bit more of I don't know if it would be a grunge stage, but it would be more of like a Fall Out Boy. And some more of that alternative type of rock. One of my friends that I was stationed with in my later party in Colorado Springs, Scott, was really big into that type of music, and we lived together for a period of time, and always was listening to that. And actually today, the Sugar, I'm going down, and the line in the song, which has many different meanings for me in my life, of I'm just a notch in your bedpost, but you're just a line in a song. That to me is just a lyric that
I saw
sticks with me.
I saw them in Champaign.
Really?
And they came out, Fall Out Boy. There was definitely this like cadence and progression of that music where it was like, yeah, we get it, the same drum solo, they all have the same kind of it's got a tone to it.
Oh yeah.
The singer's voice.
Yep.
Like people make jokes about it, and I will after this share a TikTok that I have come on to.
Oh yeah.
That has brought up a ton of memories of mine of bands that were forgotten, and there's that type of stuff where like, oh, this song is so good.
Yeah.
And and you made the comment the other day, you're like, oh, Simple Plan.
Oh, Simple
when
Plan.
I shared that,
I love
I'm
Simple
like,
Plan.
There's some good ones.
Even within that, I could go back to different chapters, listen to Simple Plan and relate that to, again, it's life, and that's.
Did you share 5 right there?
I don't know. That might have been 3 or 4.
No, you did King George, you did Shine Down, you did
Metallica,
Godsmack, Metallica. Yeah, that was 5.
And Fall Out Boy. Yeah, that is 5. It's not necessarily albums, but
what I need to ask of you is when we get off here over the next week, I think I shared mine with you.
Yeah.
But we have to create a Ryan's top albums list on Spotify.
Yeah.
I created one for me. I think I sent it to you.
Yeah.
That have all of my.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah.
I've put, and it has more than 5 albums.
Yeah.
But they're all of things that mean something to me. And if you listen to that start to finish, it's a roller coaster.
Yeah, and there's just songs in there, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but I could go back and find them in my phone. But there's songs in there that mean so much, and I can remember sitting in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere, and just this song that probably at that point I'm listening to over and over again because I have a habit of doing that too. Just put it on repeat and just listening to it, and that probably is what is engraved so far in my head. So again, not necessarily albums, but different chapters, different periods of my life, and today, if I had 6 or 7 that I could choose, the music for me today, even in the last 4 or 5 months, has been totally different, just because, getting into the podcast and listening to music differently, finding artists earlier on, rather than just listening to radio music, which has certainly intrigued me, and as you know, I spend a lot of time listening to up and coming and new that way too, just because I love to support, but then also hear.
And it's been
coming.
exciting for me to say, and go back. We still haven't even covered all of your shit. You have gone in super detail, which I'm very appreciative of. We are going to have to do a full part 2, maybe 3 for it. But I don't want to discredit anything you've been through. I'm very appreciative of you by a long shot in so many more ways than you could ever imagine. From service to my friendship with you to just our honesty with stuff. At times I feel like we both have struggles that I don't think everybody, fully understands, because I think both of us are seen as some pretty fun, don't give a fuck guys.
Yeah.
But I think both of us, it's so crazy how emotional we both can be, how much we both care about people around us. And, it's been a great friendship, and this podcast has been so much fun. And watching you get to experience certain things, I mean, for me, having got to do it, and then I get to bring you along.
Yeah.
And then, I get to show you all this music, because I also felt like even in our early friendship stage, I'm showing you stuff, and you're like, oh, man, dude, I love this.
Yeah.
This is cool. And then now I've brought you into this, and now you're blowing me up like, hey, have you seen this fucking person? I'm like, fuck, man. I'm like, holy shit. You went from 0 to 100 to the people you're finding, and you're enjoying that passion of meeting people and the networking and the just seeing them go from here to here and finding it. And I love that, and I love it for you. I love it for us. I think this has been eye-opening for everybody to hear more about you, and I don't know. We got to keep expanding on this, because again, there's a lot of depth to both of our lives and the things we've been through. And one of the things I would like to get to in one of the next ones, and you can kind of think on it, is opening up for both of us as dads, as husbands, as just men, what have been some struggles we face when it comes to. Again, I think every person. I told you today. I mean, I think today I'm just on one of those downs. I'm just a little depressed. I don't know, and I have nothing really necessarily to be depressed about, but just kind of just down. Yeah, and I think one of those things I'd like to know is how it relates to your military life versus also some of it just your own personal battles that, what you faced over these next several years after going through what you went through, getting into your 30s. What we kind of face. And I think that would be a good segue into chapter 2 for both of us of what we've battled.
Absolutely. And mental health is real. Mental health is real, although I will attempt mentally to deny it every day of the week, and try to ignore it every day of the week. It is real, and I am not good at dealing with it. I have my own coping mechanisms that I have created and have gotten used to or adapted to over time of my life. Not healthy, but at the same time, it's one of the things that I'm most excited about, or not even most excited about, one of the things I am excited about where this is going in the podcast overall is, one, I think at first, when we first started talking about this, it was all about the artist, and it was all about, talking to the artist, which is absolutely what this is about. But at the same point, there came a point in our conversations where, like, I think people need to know more about us and need to know about, what individually, because we're the common, and Tailgate Beers podcast, we're the common factor, right? The artist will come and sit down with us for an hour or whatever we can get with them. But, they're watching us on every episode if they're watching
listen
every
to our
episode.
bullshit.
Right. So having that background knowledge, I think, is helpful there.
And we also fuck around and joke around, and say all sorts of shit. But, at the end of the day, like, I think we're both deeper than that. And even some of the artists we've gotten to experience, that there's much more depth and their struggles that they deal with.
And I've had this conversation too a couple of times, even during the podcast and outside. Is I tend to be a little bit more calculated in my thought process or what comes out of my mouth, even on the podcast, just because, in my regular daily life, I do have things to lose there as far as my real job is concerned and stuff along those lines. But then I also have to think about too, which we both have kids, and I've got older kids, I've got younger kids, I've got a grandson that's 1 year old. So, eventually he might see, grandpa acting a fool on a podcast is not something that, I tend to try to ensure that I'm not discrediting, myself or my family that way as well, or my career.
That's a great, it's a good point. I just, at the same time, I argue that at the same time, or someday they're going to look and be like, that was my grandfather. Yeah. That is my dad, my dad. And I've looked at it with my own kids. My kids got our TikTok sent to them. Audrey's like, my friend sent me this TikTok, Dad. And for me, as you know, with my kids and stuff, I am exactly this is what I am with my kids. And I again, are there things I necessarily always want them to see? Not necessarily, but I also think I take the point that this podcast has opened up a can of worms of, I don't know, I still kind of just want to be who I am and who we are, and we're having real conversations. Might be a little bit more adult than most, maybe you don't want your grandkid watching it 8 years old or something like that. Maybe I don't want Audrey watching this at, 10 years old necessarily. However.
So Cambria, my 13-year-old daughter, and all of her friends, and Brecken too, but Cambria certainly at 13 is all over TikTok. They watched, all kinds of TikTok. I actually asked her last night, hey, is there any way that you could go follow our TikTok, maybe like a few things here and there, share it with your friends, that kind of thing. So far been watching and she hasn't. So we might not be that funny, but no, it's always an interesting dynamic to ensure that you're representing ourselves individually. But in a respectful way. Obviously the artists want that as well. They don't want, they want us to have some credibility as well. So they're trying to make a living off of this and being out there and their name and stuff like that. So
I think we've done a good job. At the end of the day, I think there's times maybe we've pushed it, but I think we still are both trying to navigate those waters of, being us and saying what we feel, and also not trying to get canceled or not trying to lose our jobs or,
And I'll say too, if anybody out there is still watching this other than Pat and Alex, who will have to eventually edit this, if there's anybody else still watching, if you have any ideas for random thoughts, random questions to ask people, we're always taking those. And that's one of the kind of segments we want to kind of get into this year as well, of just having a list of random things that we can ask an artist. Because a lot of them that come through us, a lot of them have done podcasts previously, and we don't want to be the same as everybody else asking the same questions.
No, we're all trying to find that niche of, hey, where are you from? Are you writing any new music?
How'd you get into music?
So again, if you have a suggestion, if you're still listening, if you're still listening, comment, let us know, share this podcast with anybody else you think might give two shits. But comment, let us know. What do you think is a good question? I ask mine. Ryan asked a lot of his same questions. And that's another tough thing we have. We're like, well, do we get off of the question now about it? Do we go on to something different?
Is it one and done?
We've gone this far. Let us know your thoughts. Again, appreciate this opportunity to be able to share with all of you, about Ryan. And, man, I'm grateful for you. And
I appreciate you. I appreciate it.
I'm pumped for part 2, man. This is
We've got 20 years left still.
Well, cheers, guys.